Welcome back to a bonus episode of the History of the Papacy podcast, exclusive to Patreon supporters at all levels. We talk so much about sources, but I rarely extensively quote the sources. In today's bonus episode, I'm going to quote some of the most important civil or secular decrees and laws for early Christians in the Roman Empire. We'll start with two edicts that allowed for toleration of Christians, and then we'll see the pendulum swing all the way to the other end of religions not being tolerated. We'll then hear some rules that were established by the civil authorities on Christians. All of these quotes are from the Fordham University Sourcebook, which is a great place to find primary sources on a wide variety of topics. I will also say at the end of each quote where each one of these quotes came specifically. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well as your comments on some of these different acts by just sending me an email or commenting below. You are also doing me a favor by listening and, if you choose to, watching this bonus episode. I'm trying to figure out a few new pieces of recording and editing technologies on both the audio and the video. So if you have any technical feedback that you notice, I'd love to hear that too. So our first quote will be Edict of Toleration by Galerius in 311 AD from chapter 34. Among other arrangements which we are always accustomed to make for the prosperity and welfare of the Republic, we had desired formally to bring all things into harmony with the ancient laws and public order of the Romans, and to provide that even the Christians who had left the religion of their fathers should come back to reason, since indeed the Christians themselves, for some reason, had followed such a caprice and had fallen into such folly that they would not obey the institutes of antiquity, which, perchance, their own ancestors had first established. But at their own will and pleasure, they would thus make laws unto themselves which they should observe, and would collect various peoples in diverse places and congregations. Finally, when our law had been promulgated to the effect that they should conform to the institutes of antiquity, many were subdued by the fear of danger. Many even suffered death. And yet, since most of them persevered in their determination, we saw that they neither paid the reverence and awe due to the gods, nor worshiped the gods of the Christians. In view of our most mild clemency and the constant habit by which we are accustomed to grand indulgences to all, we thought that we ought to grant our most prompt indulgence also to these, so that they may again be Christians and may hold their conventicles, provided they do nothing contrary to the good order. But we shall tell the magistrates in another letter what they ought to do. Wherefore, this our indulgence, they ought to pray to their God for our safety, for that of the republic, and for their own, that the republic may continue uninjured on every side, and that they may be able to live securely in their homes. This edict is published at Nicomedia on the day before the calends of May and our eighth consulship in the second of Maximinus. This was from Lactantius de Mortibus Persecutorums, or on the death of persecutors, chapter 34 and chapter 35. And then this particular one is a pretty old uh, translation. There's newer translations of that as well. You can see from this Edict of Galerius, they're kind of just giving the Christians a pass at what they might have called in Greek economy or oikomenia, which is basically saying you're not really following the rules, but we're going to give you a pass on this one as long as you don't completely foul up. Then we go forward a few years, and now we have the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. When I, Constantine Augustus, as well as I, Licinius Augustus, fortunately met near Mediolanum, Milan, and were considering everything that pertained to the public welfare and security, we thought, among other things, which we saw would be good of many, those regulations pertaining to the reverence of the dignity ought certainly to be made first, so that we might grant to the Christians and others full authority to observe that religion which each preferred, whence any divinity whatsoever in the seat of the heavens may be propitious and kindly disposed to us and all who were placed under our rule. And thus, by this welcome counsel and most upright provision, we thought to arrange that no one whatsoever should be denied the opportunity to give his heart to the observance of the Christian religion, of that religion which he should think best for himself, so that the supreme deity to whose worship we freely yield our hearts may show in all things his usual favor and benevolence. Therefore, your worship should know that it has pleased us to remove all conditions whatsoever which were in the rescripts formerly given to you officially concerning the Christians, and now any of those who wish to observe Christian religion may do so freely and openly without molestation. We thought it fit to condemn these things most fully to your care, that you may know that we have given to those Christians free and unrestricted opportunity of religious worship. Then you see that this has been granted to them by us. Your worship will know that we have also conceded to other religions the right of open and free observance to their worship for the sake of the peace of our times, that each one may have the free opportunity to worship as he pleases. This regulation is made so that we may not seem to detract from any dignity or any religion. Moreover, in the case of the Christians especially, we esteemed it best to order that if it happens any one heretofore has brought from our treasury from any one whatsoever, whose places were they previously accustomed to assemble, concerning which a certain decree had been made and a letter sent to you officially, the same shall be restored to the Christians without payment or any claim of recompense, and without any kind of fraud or deception. Those, moreover, who have obtained the same by gift are likewise to return them at once to the Christians. Besides, both those who have purchased and those who have secured them by gift are to appeal to the vicar if they seek any recompense from our bounty, that they may be cared for through our clemency. All this property ought to be delivered at once to the community of the Christians through your intercession and without delay. And since these Christians are known to have possessed not only those places in which they were accustomed to assemble, but also other property, namely the churches, belonging to them as a corporation and not as individuals, all these things which we have included under the above law, you will order to be restored without any hesitation or controversy at all to these Christians, that is to say, to the corporations and their conventicles, providing, of course, that the above arrangements be followed, so that those who return the same without payment, as we have said, may hope for an indemnity from our bounty. In all these circumstances, you ought to tender your most efficacious intervention to the community of the Christians, that our command be carried into effect as quickly as possible, whereby, moreover, through our clemency, public order may be secured. Let this be done so that, as we have said above, divine favor towards us, which, under the most important circumstances, have already experienced, may for all time preserve and prosper our successes together with the good of the state. Moreover, in order that this statement of this decree of our goodwill may come to the notice of all, this rescript published by your decree shall be announced everywhere and brought to the knowledge of all, so that the decree of this, our benevolence, cannot be concealed. And this is another one based on Lactantius from the death of the persecutors. This is particularly chapter 48. The one thing I wanted to say about this, I mean, you could do whole lecture series on the Edict of Milan, but one thing that I'd like to say about it is there's a really interesting little tidbit in there about a offer of an indemnity paid to those who had Christian property who just gave it back to the Christians. And that makes me think of something of a regulatory taking, in that people living and working under the previous regime got that property from the Christians, which you might say fair and square under the laws of the day. But now the laws, the regulations are changing to something new. And in effect, the government is taking something away from them now. These people who had gotten that Christian property, it may not have been the greatest way that they got the property morally or ethically, but legally it was 100% above board. Now they're getting their property taken away from them. Again, it's 100% legally above board because there's a new law, this Edict of Milan. But Constantine is offering them some money, an indemnity back, to at least paper over that taking that the government is now doing. And you'll see this sort of thing all the time where rules change. People who are operating under the previous rule are going to be harmed. The government in some way making up for that. You could say it's not the greatest in a way, because morally and ethically those people were wrong for taking other people's property when they did it, but it's not legally wrong. And I think you could think of a lot of different circumstances where it's no big deal. I think of one example is the Uber. Uber is now legal, but then people have spent literally millions of dollars on taxi medallions in big cities, because having a taxi medallion was essentially a right to print money. Now these taxis are fighting with in competition with Uber, and it's a whole different story. Do they deserve some sort of recompense or indemnity that the taxi companies were playing completely under the rules, and now they're not? Now that the rules have changed, do they deserve something for that? That's something that's a very interesting discussion. But I think you could think of things that are a lot more ethically questioning or morally questionable, that the government changes laws, flips them and flops them, where there could be issues to discuss. Now I'm going to wrap up today with just the a little bit from the Theodosian Code on the banning of other religions. I'm going to read the main part and then maybe just pick out one or two other little bits of the edict, uh, clauses from the edict, and we'll leave it at that for today. So this is from the Theodosian Code, chapter 16.1.2. And I should say that the Edict of Milan was in the early 4th century. Now, this Theodosian Code is from the later 4th century, and we're going to see how much things have changed in just this little bit of time. So this is from the Theodosian Code. It is our desire that all the various nations which are subject to our clemency and moderation should continue the profession of that religion which was delivered to the Romans by the divine apostle Peter, as it has been preserved by the faithful tradition, and which is now professed by the Pontiff Damascus and by Peter, Bishop of Alexandria, a man of apostolic holiness. According to the apostolic teaching and the doctrine of the gospel, let us believe in the one deity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in equal majesty, and in a holy trinity. We authorize the followers of this law to assume the title Catholic Church, but as for the others, since in our judgment they are foolish madmen, we decree that they shall be branded with the ignominious name of heretics, and shall not presume to give their conventicles the name of churches. They will suffer in the first place the chastisement of the divine condemnation, and the second, the punishment of our authority, in accordance with the will of heaven, shall decide to inflict. And this is from Harry Bettison, who was the editor of Documents of the Early Church, and that was from London, Oxford University Press in 1943, page 31. In the medieval source book, it said that this short extract was used under fair use provisions. I think something that old isn't under fair use, but I didn't use so much. So if you have a problem with it, Oxford University Press, I should be under fair use. Don't tell on me. Here's just a couple more points from the Codex Theodosianus from the On Religion section. Bloody spectacles are not suitable for civil ease and domestic quiet. Wherefore, since we have prescribed gladiators, those who have been accustomed to be sentenced to such work as punishment for their crimes, you should cause to serve in the mines, so that they may be punished without shedding their blood. Take it or leave it. No more gladiators. You have to go die in the mines. Here's another one. It is necessary that the privileges which are bestowed for the cultivation of religion should be given only to the followers of the Catholic faith. We desire that heretics and schismatics be not only kept from these privileges, but be subject to various fines. It is decreed that in all places and in all cities the temple should be closed at once, and after a general warning, the opportunity of sinning be taken from the wicked. We decree also that we shall cease from making sacrifices, and if anyone has committed such a crime, let him be stricken with the avenging sword. And we decree that the property of the one executed shall be claimed by the city, and that the rulers of the provinces be punished in the same way if they neglect to punish such crimes. So, no more edicts of toleration. Toleration is a thing of the past. Here's another death penalty. The ability and right of making wills shall be taken from those who turn from Christians to pagans, and the testament of such a one, if he made any, shall be abrogated after his death. And let's just end with one more. Whenever there is found a meeting of a mob of Manichaeans, let the leaders be punished with a heavy fine, and let those who attended be known as infamous and dishonored, and be shut out from association with men, and let the houses and the dwellings where their profane doctrine was taught be seized by the officers of the city. So we'll leave it there. I want to thank everyone for listening today. I really enjoy sharing these types of documents because I know for me, it can be really hard to find the time to sit down and just read old documents and legal codices. I find it much easier to listen to them, at least speaking for myself. And many of these documents are not available in audio format, or you can sometimes find some on LibriVox, and they have very sketchy recording quality. I've had a false start myself with recording some primary source documents, especially with Jerome's On Illustrious Men. I recorded the first 2/3 of it and I never got to the last third. If this is something you would like me to finish up on that little bit of on illustrious men or do more of these recordings, let me know. And I can try to record some more of these and I'll put them up on Patreon first for you to enjoy, and then maybe later on the main feed. Thank you again for listening, and I will talk to you next time.